Welcome to Cultivated Live for Monday, April 22nd. Oh, it's been a long weekend, everybody, with 420. I'm Jay Rosenthal, the co-founder of Cultivated Media and host of this program, Cultivated Live. And since we launched, our goal at Cultivated has been to be cannabis industry first, providing you with the most important, insightful, and useful information. And we do that through two key ways. One, through our daily newsletter, Cultivated Daily, and you could read today's and subscribe with the link below. And we do it through our daily live stream, which is this, called Cultivated Live. We'd love for you to follow us on LinkedIn, subscribe on YouTube, subscribe to our daily newsletter, and all the rest to stay informed. In a moment, we're going to be joined by Terrence White from Monko in DC. We're going to talk all things DC and cannabis. But before we do, let's go to what is driving the cannabis industry today. Politicians, brands, restaurants all want a piece, or did, of 420. It is no longer the domain of the in-the-know stoners and the cool kids, but major fast food brands are advertising everything from pizza pre-rolls to deliciously dope dime bags. Movie theaters are doing 420 specials, showing stoner classics with menu tie-ins. Tens of thousands of people, if not hundreds of thousands of people, gather to consume cannabis in New York's Washington Square Park, Toronto's Yonge and Dundas Square, DC's RFK Park, and prominent locations around the world. For their part, President Biden, the Senate Majority Leader, other top politicians, including the Senate Finance Committee Chair, are using the unofficial cannabis consuming holiday to push their reform agendas. The bottom line, viewers, we hate to say it, but 420 has gone mainstream. 420 could, in a way, become the next Super Bowl for brands that want to go after cannabis consumers. So brands in any sort of cannabis consuming adjacent industry, whether it's fast food, meal delivery, concert venues, or even movie theaters, are going to have to start planning. In fact, New York Times famed food critic Peter Wells wrote, "But with the restaurants across the country offering special meals this weekend inspired by cannabis culture generally, and the number 420 specifically, April 20th is looking more and more like a national food holiday." And frankly, we're here for it. And so much so that last Friday, the White House was asked again about cannabis rescheduling, descheduling, legalization. Here's the White House press secretary had to say.
I mean, look, on decriminalization, the president has been very, very clear. He doesn't believe that anyone should be in jail or be prosecuted just for using or possessing marijuana. He continues to say that. He believes that. As you know, he asked the Secretary of HHS and the Attorney General to initiate the administrative process to review how marijuana is being scheduled. HHS concluded their independent review, which was guided by evidence, by science, which is what we believe here in this administration. And now the scheduling review is now with the Department of Justice. And so certainly the process is still going, the review is still going, so DOJ has this. But the president has been really, really clear about how he feels about the people being prosecuted just for using or possessing marijuana. That has not changed. And now HHS has did their review, and now DOJ. It's in the hands of DOJ.
That's not new for those that follow the industry. That essentially means that HHS has recommended that cannabis be rescheduled. DOJ, in this case, is the DEA. So we continue to wait for descheduling, rescheduling. We await that decision. In other news, Minnesota's House approved a bill that would speed up the legal cannabis rollout, according to NPR news reports. New York Governor Kathy Hochul and New York City Mayor Eric Adams held a press conference touting cannabis-related aspects of the 2025 budget, specifically the power it gives to padlock stores selling unlicensed cannabis. And two cannabis industry trade groups in New York are sniping back and forth over a letter the Cannabis Association of New York sent to the state's cannabis regulators, urging against swiftly issuing several new retail licenses over fears that it would flood the market. This, according to Spectrum Local News. And as well, one new brand we wanted to talk about, former NBA star Carmelo Anthony announced the launch of his cannabis brand, Stay Me 70. I don't even know how to pronounce it, but he announced it on 420, and I love Mello, so that's cool. The brand will be available in Portland, and Anthony says Denver next on the list, two cities he played for. Could New York be next? We certainly hope so. And maybe DC too, which brings us to our guest today. I'm going to bring up Terrence White. Terrence, welcome. Oh, I put you on mute, but I will unmute. There you go.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. And I said before we got on air, and we'll talk about Monko in a bit, but I lived in DC from 96 through 98, and I wish Monko was around then. But how is it being received now?
Um, what open arms? There's been a lot of work. When I thought about Monko during COVID, as I told you earlier backstage, it was to make Monko luxury and to take the stigma and stench off of cannabis. And so first we had to find the right location, and so we're at 444 K Street,
Love
which is
that.
in the Mount Vernon Triangle part of the city, a very gentrified community, right at the cuffs of 2 blocks over from the convention center in downtown DC. So we've had great success so far, and continue to work and continue not only to work to take the stitch and stigma, but also social equity and justice side of the advocacy side. We have a motto is called "Flower to the People," which that's my advocacy. How we go out and continue to make sure that people of color advance in this industry.
There's something there's lots of unique things about DC. The most unique, independent outside of cannabis too, is that it is a city without a state. The the city has lots of power, but there's also governance from the federal government, which is very cumbersome from a city perspective. How does that intersect with sort of what happens with cannabis? Because we see in most places, right? There are obviously cities like in New York, there's New York City, but the state is actually the governing body and the regulator. How does that work in DC? And what kinds of, I guess, challenges, but also opportunities does that mean for folks like you who are trying to do business?
Well, DC could be an emerging market, but as you know, the Harris Rider has, from a federal level, has crippled us. DC was the first 1998 to pass legalized marijuana from a municipal standpoint, and then 2004 went to the actual making cannabis recreational, and then Andy Harris stepped in and said no. And Andy Harris is from the state of Maryland, who's a congressman who is a far right extremist to most, has said, no, DC, you can do things at a minimum level, but not at a maximum level. And so we've been fighting that fight. It's not been easy because most cities roll out cannabis with a committee. DC rolled out cannabis with the Department of Health. It was supposed to be wellness, but they didn't understand the business side of it. So we've been trying to amend some laws and regulations. So there's been some obstacles and challenges. But as the chairman of the I-71 committee here, who, these are compliance of gifting stores or shops. And that was the loophole from the actual us not being able to be recreation. We actually gift cannabis. So it's a few of us that are compliant shops who formed a committee to actually fight things that needed to be fixed in the city. And I was honored to be the chair, and I'm the sitting chair at the moment. And there's a lot of rewards, but man, it's been a challenge day
No
in
good
and day
deed,
out.
no good deed goes unpunished, right?
Absolutely.
And so, tell me about Monko, the brand and the shop. Give us a little picture of what that's about. Because certainly online it looks beautiful. I haven't been there, but next time in DC, I am going to stop in. Tell us a little bit about it.
So Monko, I came from the real estate side of industry, and rehabbing and developing and consulting. So what I wanted to do is make Monko airy and luxury, but also give it the experience. I'm big on customer service. I wanted it to be equivalent to a Louis Vuitton or Gucci store in terms of cannabis, and but also wanted to make sure that we wasn't sterile like Apple,
Right.
or we wanted to have a personal customer touch. And that goes with the education side, the customer service side, and of course the product side. So we formulated those three things into making this, we call it Ignite Your Curiosity. And we wanted to ignite everyone's curiosity that walked in. Well, what is that? I've never seen this, because there's no store in DC like that. And once we get you in, we educate you. We take you on that ride to get you outside of thinking, well, I'm in New York or I'm in LA, but I'm actually in DC, and these products are great. And not only are they great, but there's something that I need, not someone's forcing it on me.
Yeah. Yeah. And what have you seen? I think you mentioned you got to DC in '96. What have you seen about sort of the culture or the cannabis community in DC throughout these years? Because I mean, it's been as you said, the trials and tribulations, the uniqueness of sort of what happens in DC, but also this movement that's happening outside of DC towards more and more legalization, including in Maryland. Not so much in Virginia yet, but like how does that community and culture sort of expanded beyond? Or over the past, 20 something years.
Well, when I first came here, when you smell cannabis, people were like, like, where's that, right? And of course, you had people, I'll be 52 this year. I've been around it all my life, but a lot of people couldn't relate, in '96. And we talked about that period. And as time progressed and as people progressed, and then now you got Gen Z and millennials, that's their preference. So the city had to grow with actually the voting blocks. And as people loosen up, even the older people, they're now not no longer, they don't want to be called stoners. They want to be called connoisseurs. And so people have gravitated towards the idea that cannabis is free, because not only is it free, it's wellness. A lot of people need us to cope. And I think COVID really turned a different corner for cannabis in DC. We had a lot of people sitting with anxiety and depression, and they resorted to cannabis to help them get through their day-to-day pains.
Yeah. And it works. I'm no
Absolutely.
doctor, but I am a connoisseur and consumer of cannabis, and it works.
So yeah, that was big. So Monko, what we wanted to do is bring this to the forefront to let people know that not only were we vibrant and not only were we accessible, but we also, my biggest thing is educating people. How do we help them? you know, and not only, and then we have something called Flower to the People that we advocate, and we go out into the community, especially deserved communities, and let them understand how to get into the business and what it takes to get into the business, and why Monko. Um, you know, we've been blessed. Our average cart is like $127 to $135 a cart on average. The national average is about 78. I brought that luxury feel, but also made it feel like home. So we've been blessed because we've been able to train staff, and I have a phenomenal executive team that has helped me reach those goals. But believe me, there's been many a nights. The first month I was in business, I made 78 grand. I was scratching my head, and I was like, whoa. And I went to MJ Biz, and I sat down with a old timer who been in the business for a while. Told me, he says, remember, patience, my friend, patience. So a lot of 16, 17, 20-hour days, but we've turned it around. We've been profitable. And, we're now, our focus is, continue to add footsteps in the door, but mainly continue to reach out to those in the district that want a safe haven, that want a luxury feel, and get the opportunity to get great product. Recently in November, I became vertically integrated because I now have a conditional cultivation and manufacturer license, and Pleasant Hill Wellness is well on its way to cultivate and manufacture. So we're excited about all the opportunities, but that news clip that you showed,
Yeah.
is much needed. I've been trying to work with On the Hill as well to reach out to U.S. congressmen and senators to see how we can get this rider removed, or actually take the can, put us take the cannabis budget out of President Biden's budget, because he actually could have got rid of the rider. He hasn't. We've been asking him to do that as well.
Yeah, and this goes to, of course, cannabis, but also other issues in DC. Let DC be a real city, and let the voters in DC decide what they want for their own city, as opposed to like the biggest landlord in the city, which is the federal government. Right? It does set up a dynamic where the voters have had their say, yet they're not allowed to do what they intended to do with the votes, on taxation, on cannabis, on other issues as well. But as you said, or the sage at MJ Biz said, patience. It's a long game. Yeah.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Understanding that government has a thumb on you is one thing. DC, we've been trying to be the 51st state. We understand the politics behind that. And I tell a lot of people, until we have Senate terms and legislation terms, we can forget about that. It's too many old school people that are politicians that don't want that change. In due time, I think that might happen later on down the road. But if you go back to the Barry administration here, and that's when the federal government stripped DC of its legislative powers. Right after Mayor Barry was incarcerated, that's what happened. And so we've been fighting that fight for a long time. But if you think about it in terms, we're paid the fourth highest taxes in the country. We're in an 8.8 square mile city that saw 22. We saw 22 million people last year that visited the nation's capital. So you were talking about our partners to the north and east of us, Maryland. They saw $700 million in cannabis sales last year. This year, they're forecasting $1 billion. Now, you tell me, I got 22 million people that visit. This 8.8 square mile city could have anywhere between a $700 and $1 billion cannabis. Boom. Do you understand the financial gains, not only for the businesses, but those people who are despaired and poverty in this city, that tax dollar can help?
Yeah.
That's the reality of this. And so I've been fighting, and I'll continue to fight. And for those who want to reach out to me, I'm Terrence White. You can reach me at twhite@monko.co. I need people with power to help me get this problem resolved. This is the nation's capital, guys. We live in the most liberal city in the country with the most conservative cannabis laws in the country.
Yes.
Let that set in.
That's true. That's
And
true.
so yeah, I've been trying to, and we fight this fight, and it's just not me, the I-71 committee, London Green. There's a lot of us out here fighting. I just did Women in Cannabis awards for the second year in a row. Monko presents Women in Cannabis, and Khadijah Tribble, Christina Johnson, that I recognize locally and some on a national level. I've been trying to get everyone involved to help me push this message, because it's very important that DC be adult use. That's, if we're going to take and say, hey, we can get it right. We have the blueprint. I will commend the state of Maryland. They got it wrong, but now they're getting it right. We have a blueprint. We have everything that it takes. We have the infrastructure. Our biggest problem here will always, and that's why descheduling is very important. DC is only 8.8 square miles. Cultivation is going to be our biggest problem in the city.
Mm-hmm.
Not due to that we can't serve the 900,000 people that live here. We can't serve the 22 million people that visit here.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Unless you start growing it on the mall, which.
Yeah. Well, if you take all the zoning laws, you take all the landlords who can't rent you because they're on monetized loans that are backed government or backed by different, that says that they can't lease to cannabis businesses. That's your problem.
Yeah.
And then those who want to do it, they want you to pay all the fees
Right.
so that they can refinance it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Well, Terrence, I want to thank you for making time today for your advocacy, but also the great work you're doing at Monko, brand and product wise, and all those things. And we haven't even talked about it sort of on Cultivated News, but we're going to be in Baltimore for NECAN May 3rd and 4th, and we will see you in Baltimore. Yeah.
Absolutely. You let me know, and I'll definitely be there, Jay. I appreciate this opportunity to speak to you and your audience this morning.
Well, great. So I'm going to keep you up for 1 sec while we wrap the show. And we will see you in a couple weeks in Baltimore. Thank you for your time, Terrence White from Monko. Give me 1 sec while we read it out. I'm Jay Rosenthal. That's it for today's Cultivated Live. We encourage you to subscribe to our daily newsletter at cultivated.news. Follow us on LinkedIn. Smash the subscribe button on YouTube. That's what the kids want me to say. We'll see you back here tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern, right here on LinkedIn and YouTube. We'll be with Brad Spearson from Grown In. We'll be actually breaking some news tomorrow at 10 a.m., so tune in. Buy cannabis at your local dispensary or get it gifted to you at your local dispensary if you happen to be in I-71 territory. Terrence White from Monko, thank you again. We'll connect with everybody tomorrow.